Happy Freeze Dry Friday, and this week's edition is a new recipe, a DIY MRE. I cooked up an amazing noodle dish last week and then decided I needed to try this freeze dried. So that is what we are going to do today. This is a beef and creamy noodle dish that came out absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to see how these come out after being freeze dried, if they'll be just as delicious. I did weigh these trays before they went into the freeze dryer, so we're gonna try the calculations again to see if we can get these rehydrated well. But for now, let me talk you through how I did this incredible dish. First thing we do is we need to get this meat browned. It's just going to help develop a really good flavor on it. So I'm salting this with some kosher salt that helps to build a little bit of a crust on the meat. And then I am pan searing these in cast iron. I'm trying not to overcrowd the pans and flipping them after a few minutes once I notice that there is color on the one side. So we're gonna get color on both sides, and then I'm just gonna put that straight into my pressure cooker pot without the trivet. And this, because I'm using 4 pounds of beef, this did take a little bit of time to get everything brown, but it is definitely well worth it. And once everything is in the pot, I'm gonna add in 3 cans of cream of mushroom soup and then fill each of those cans up with water. So 3 cans of soup, 3 cans of water. We're adding about 1/8 of a cup of thyme to this dish. Now, thyme, it has vitamin A and vitamin C, so antioxidants that are good for mucous membranes, skin, and vision, as well as helping to protect against infectious diseases. It helps to lower blood pressure. It's been known to help with coughs, boost your immunity, and help fight yeast infections. It has a good amount of copper, fiber, iron, and manganese. We're adding about 1/4 cup of marjoram to this recipe. Marjoram is part of the mint family. It has a long history of use treating digestive issues, infections, and even menstrual cramps in women. It helps reduce anxiety, it's antimicrobial, it contains potassium, magnesium, folate, vitamin A, and vitamin K. It contains carvacrol, which is a compound that helps reduce inflammation in the body, which can lower your risk of diabetes, cancer, and autoimmune disorders. It can help prevent stomach ulcers and fight off foodborne pathogens in your gut. It has also been used to treat polycystic ovary syndrome and to help regulate female hormones and to help with insulin sensitivity. You can use it as a tea, a garnish, or as an ingredient in dishes. It goes really well with beef, I can tell you that right now. There are some cautions with marjoram. Because of its strong effect on the female reproductive health, you need to consult your doctor before using if you're pregnant. It has also been noted to slow platelet formation. So if you're taking blood thinners, you're going to want to talk with your doctor before starting a regimen of marjoram. And it can also significantly lower blood sugar levels. So if you're taking diabetes medication, then you need to talk with your doctor also. And dried is a lot more aromatic and potent than fresh. Once we have the herbs added to our dish, we are going to pressure cook this on high for 30 minutes. That is really going to tenderize the beef. There's going to be some liquid left over. Of course, the meat is not going to absorb the liquid that we're putting in here, but that is going to get absorbed by the noodles. So we're cooking these noodles in boiling salted water for about 7 or 8 minutes, just package directions until they're al dente. That's important, you want them al dente. And then we're gonna marry everything together in the pot, and we're going to let it sit for about 30 minutes. And by the end of those 30 minutes, there will not be any liquid left over. Those al dente noodles are gonna soak all of that up, and they are going to become incredibly flavorful. And once we've sat for 30 minutes and we're mostly cooled off at this point, we're gonna put that onto some freeze dryer trays. Then we're gonna let that fully cool down before they go into the freezer for a 24-hour pre-freeze. And now let's get these over to the freeze dryer. I'll give you a close-up and we'll start the processing. All right, we're gonna get our freeze dryer going here. So we're gonna customize -10 initial freeze, perfect, extra freeze time 0 because we are pre-frozen. Dry temp of 120 is good, and extra dry time of 15 hours, that's perfect. We're gonna push save. We're gonna start, and then we're gonna wait at least 15 minutes before putting the trays into the freeze dryer. We're just about at the 20-minute mark, so we can go ahead and get these trays loaded in. Let me give you a close-up on this. This came out so incredible. The marjoram in here is like magic. I had last summer on a video, I was freeze drying marjoram and I said I just hadn't quite found the perfect application for it yet, but I definitely wanted to because of the health properties of it. And I have now found that this recipe is absolutely insanely good, and it is all thanks to the marjoram. So if you have a freeze dryer, and I'm assuming that you do, or at least you're thinking about getting one because you're watching a freeze drying video, please grow some marjoram. I grow mine in my green stock, so a tiny little pocket in a container, and you can get that freeze dried up and you can have that shelf stable ready for years and years and years. It's definitely worth it. All right, let's get these loaded in. And with them loaded, we just need to close the drain valve and then push continue. I'm guessing 36 to 40 hours on these. We'll come back when the extra 15-hour dry time is complete. We'll test for dryness, we'll get these packaged up, and we will rehydrate some and give it a taste test. We're gonna go ahead and stop this freeze dryer. I just added 2 more hours onto it after adding an extra 8 hours onto it last night, just for convenience sake. So we're at the 47-hour mark now. We're gonna go ahead and get these out and take a look. We just need to open the drain valve. They look good. There's not much ice in here, about 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I'm sure these are plenty dry. They're very light. I think we are good to go. So we're gonna get these into the kitchen, take a closer look, get them packaged up. Looks good. And we're gonna be doing things just a little bit different here in the kitchen today with these trays. So I'm gonna try to hurry. First thing I'm gonna do is weigh them in grams, because that's what I weighed them before going in. So this tray was originally 1747 and now it's 1019. And this tray was originally 1851 and it's now 1117. This tray was originally 1846 and now it's 1047. And this tray was originally 1960 and now it is 1082. That is the dry end weight. I have to weigh the trays with the dividers in them and the food out when we're done, just so I can get the difference between the wet and the dry food only. So I will be doing that. The other thing, so I'm gonna leave my scale out. The other thing is I cannot find my pint size Mylar bags. I know I have more because I have a lot more of the oxygen absorbers and I bought equal amounts, so they're tucked away somewhere. So what I have done is I have cut down the 1 gallon bags in half. So I have one with a zipper side and one with not a zipper side. So we're gonna do these into individual servings, and I have to weigh each one of these as well. I'm gonna try something with the reconstitution here. I definitely did not need to use a tray liner. It's not sticking, but I just have to get it off of these dividers here. All right, 45 grams. So I wrote 45 grams dry on here. And I'm actually gonna get a bowl or something to put this in so I can pour it into the bags when we're done. All right, that's now tarred to 0. So we have 45 grams in this one. $67 grams in this one. And I'm trying a different math calculation for reconstitution, because clearly you can see that even though these were the same space, same sizes on the tray, their end weight is different. So if I were to just do the weight across the entire tray divided by the number of sections, it's not going to be an accurate result. All right, so we've got 2 bags. Hopefully that's gonna work. And now I'm gonna try to do a seal on these using my, what is this? My Food Saver. So what I've done is I've cut strips of the Food Saver bag, just small little strips that I'm gonna place in the corners to keep the bag open enough so that it can pull the air out and then seal it. And we're gonna hope that that works. Hopefully I can get it up here enough to seal it. Seems to be working. Oh, hold on, I forgot the oxygen absorber. What was I thinking? All right, let me take my strips out. We'll put in 1 oxygen absorber. I'm gonna use the smaller oxygen absorbers for the pint-sized bags, especially since I'm sucking the air out of these. I think that that is appropriate. So I'm just putting these strips in the corners and I'm leaving overhang over the top. I tried to cut these bags straight so they would fit in here nicely. All right, let's vacuum. And then I'm just gonna hit seal. I didn't wanna pull all of the air out because there are some sharp corners with the noodles. And so now we have a thin seal across the top that I'm now gonna hit with the impulse sealer. Nope, that did not work. All right, let's try that one more time. The seal didn't hold. Why did it not hold? This is not something that I came up with. I saw this on Rose Red Homestead. She did this and it worked for her. I don't know if my bags are long enough. I bet, you know what? Let me try something real quick. I'm gonna impulse seal it this way, and I'm gonna cut the seal off of this so it's longer, and I think it'll fit in there better. So let me impulse seal this closed. I'm gonna do a double seal. And then I can cut one end off this way. And put the strips in. Maybe I just need one strip. Maybe one's enough. Let's see. I think this is going to work better. Voila. And seal. That worked great. I'm still going to impulse seal it because this is not going to be a tight seal. And the only downside to this is because this was the lower half of the bag, there's no zipper across it, but the air has been sucked out. There is an oxygen absorber in there, and we have a dry gram weight on the bag. So now let's do this one. I'm going to impulse seal it first, and we'll cut across the short end. Getting a little creative in the kitchen today. Put my tag in. And get the air removed. It's working great. And seal. I don't want to cinch down too hard. Again, I don't want to poke a hole in the bags. And then impulse times 2. And then I can just cut this little tab off. All right. Those look great. So I'm going to continue with that, and I'm going to do that quickly because I have to go somewhere. I have to be somewhere soon. And then once these are all bagged up and I get back later, I'll show you the math I'm going to use to try to figure out reconstitution on these, and then we will get them reconstituted. That was a ton of work. If you have been visiting my Freeze Dry Friday videos, you'll know I talk all the time about the fact that I just go from the gut in terms of rehydration of things, even reconstitution of things. I don't do a lot of weighing and measuring because I find that it is just not that very precise, and I'm going to show you why here in painstakingly drawing out these calculations for you. So on a tray, if it's more than one serving, you have to be precise in weighing that in order to make sure that you're calculating the right rehydration. And just as an example, here is one that calculated it out at 62 grams dry weight in this bag here. And this was from my tray labeled Y. Here's a Y. Here's a Y, here's a Y. All right, there were six servings per tray. This one calculated out at 51, 62, 68. So they're all different. So if I were to calculate it, assuming 68 grams per serving, I would oversaturate the 51 gram per serving bag. So I like to just eyeball it. Where was the one I wanted to? This one. This one's not too big. Okay. But I did put together a formula for calculation that we're going to test out. Let me talk you through that right now while we are waiting for the kettle to come up to a boil. All right, here is the calculations for determining how much rehydration you need when you're doing individual servings from a tray. So if you're calculating the weight across the whole tray and your servings are not evenly portioned, then your rehydration calculations will be incorrect. So here's how we're going to do it. First, we are going to solve for the total moisture loss, which I'm calling M, and that will be the same for each serving per tray. So you just need to solve it per tray. We need to determine the fresh weight of the food, which was the starting weight after I filled the trays and, before they went into the freezer or the freeze dryer, minus the weight of the empty trays and the divider. So I'm calling that F and I'm calling that T. Then we need to determine the dry weight, which is the processed weight, so the weight that we got after the trays came out of the freeze dryer, minus T, minus the weight of the trays and the dividers. And then we need to calculate the water loss, which is the fresh weight minus the dry weight that we will have already calculated for. And then we need to determine the moisture loss, M, which is going to be the water loss divided by the fresh weight times 100, and it will be a percentage. Then we can do the calculations per serving. And what we're trying to solve for is rehydration in terms of grams. So if you measure your servings in terms of grams or whatever, just stay consistent throughout, then we can actually solve for that. So the calculation for that is going to be the dry weight that you have per serving. So let's say you're using a Mylar bag. Whatever the dry weight that you put into that bag, that's the dry weight serving S. Then we also need to determine the original fresh weight of that serving. So that where you're going to call O, and the calculation for that is the dry serving weight divided by 1 minus your moisture loss divided by 100. And then we can come up with our reconstitution requirements, which I'm calling R, and that would be in terms of liquid grams or grams of liquid. And the calculation for that is going to be O, or the original fresh weight, minus S, the dry weight. So you can see that on one of my trays, the total tray once it was filled, it had tray dividers in it, but before it went into the freezer or the freeze dryer, it weighed 1,960 grams. The empty tray and the divider was 674 grams. So those calculations we need to know. And then once the tray was freeze dried and I weighed each portion on that particular tray, I came up with 73 grams for one bag, 51 for another, 45 for another, 78 for another, 67 for another, 88 for another. So then we would just need to calculate the same for all the trays, okay, which I did, or what you can, because we're gonna have to do a little bit of math here, or you can just take the entire dry weight of the finished product after it comes out of the freeze dryer and then divide that equally into the however many number of servings that you want. Then you only have to do this math once, but it's not too hard math. So I'm just calling it tray 1. So you have my dry weights there in grams, and we are solving for the fresh weight first. So fresh weight was 1960 minus the tray. So fresh weight was 1,286 grams. The dry weight was 1,082. So that's how much the food weighed, okay, or the tray weighed after it came out of the freeze dryer, minus the 674 grams of the tray weight and the tray dividers. So dry weight equals 408. So then we need to calculate W, which is water loss. And that is the fresh weight minus the dry weight. So water loss equals 874 grams. Then we need to do that moisture calculation, that moisture loss calculation. So we take the water loss, 874 grams, and divide that by the fresh weight, which was 1,286, multiply that by 100, and we get that percentage. So our moisture loss ratio was 68%. For the first serving, which is S, which was 73 grams, then we can calculate for O, and again, O is the original fresh weight per serving. So we take that S, 73 grams, and divide it by 1 minus the moisture percentage loss divided by 100. And so the original fresh weight calculation, or O, would be 28 grams. Then we take that and solve for R, or how much reconstitution liquid we need. So we take the 228 grams representing the original fresh weight, and we subtract S, which is the dry per serving weight of that particular serving. And then we get 155 grams. So we would need to add 155 grams of liquid to reconstitute a 73 gram dry weight serving. I hope that makes sense. And so if you go down to the bag that had 45 grams, the math is the same. It's all the same per tray, but it's not going to be the same in terms of solving for M from tray to tray. So you'll have to do the top part of the calculations here, the FDWM per tray, and then you have to solve for R. But you only have to solve for R once if you divide the total weight of the dry food after it's been processed equally among your containers, your bags, your jars. So there you have it. There you have a rehydration calculation for per serving. And I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions, leave them for me in the comments down below. I'm really not good at math, so this took me a long time to figure out and put together, but we're going to give it a test. So let's go ahead and pull one of these bags. I've already written on each of them what the rehydration ratio of liquid is in terms of grams, and so we're going to test it. And the other thing I'll mention is using the food saver to suck the air out. It did work, but it was really tricky. So the food saver bags, they have bumps or ridges on them. So you have to make sure that you're using a piece of it that has the bumps or the ridges. If I ended up cutting off a piece that was smooth, it didn't work at all. And with the zipper, it was a little challenging to do that. To be honest with you, I probably won't do that again. And I did get a little bit fed up with it. And so I just switched over to my metal straw, which is what I used to use all the time before I started doing YouTube videos. But it would seem kind of weird sucking air out with the straw. But to be honest, that's how I did it for almost 3 years or 2 years. So what I would do is I would zipper the bag almost all the way closed, just leaving enough space to stick my metal straw in it. And you can see that the straw is curved, right? Clearly this side goes into your mouth. And I would just suck the air out, holding the bag around that straw, and then pulling the straw out and zippering that closed. So I have done that for a long time, and it works really, really well. I'm the only one who uses these straws, and they do get washed, but I mean, it would look a little odd for me to show that on camera. Use your best judgment, but I don't think that I would use the food saver again. Today, this took me hours. I started 12 hours ago, and I know I had to step out and I was gone for a couple of hours, but it is 6:30 in the evening now. I'm exhausted, and that's because of, trying to use the food saver on all the bags, as well as running all the calculations for all the bags, coming up with the calculations to get it right. Fingers crossed, I hopefully did. So hopefully you'll find some value in that. But we are going to go ahead and we are going to rehydrate one of these, and I'm going to do it in the bag because I have never done that before. So per my calculations, this came off of tray Y, and it was 62 grams dry, and my calculations say that it's going to need 130 grams of liquid added back to it in order to completely rehydrate it. I'm not calling this a reconstitution because I think you saw on the prep video that there was not a lot of liquid. So I'm not worried about maintaining a certain consistency. I just want these hydrated. So I am gonna measure out 132 grams of liquid as best I can. And then I'm just gonna pour it in the bag, zipper it sealed, and then we're gonna have to wait for it to rehydrate, and then we'll give it a taste test. I'm gonna need a bigger vessel. All right, that's 70 grams. So I need 62 more grams of liquid. I don't know if that, okay. I don't know if that was tarred. Sorry, I gotta do that again. This is hot. I'm just gonna dump it. All right, I think it was tarred, but then it was showing 4 grams on there. So I am really, really kind of spacey right now with all the math. I'm not a math person. So I'm gonna bring this one back up to 70. Perfect. And now, again, we need 62 more grams. And for those of you that do painstakingly take the time to do all of your calculations, bravo. I guess I'm a lazy freeze dryer. I don't have the patience for all of this. I really don't. This took me hours and hours and hours today. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this open. I'm not gonna use the tear notches because my hands don't really work in pulling those off. But I'm keeping the zipper intact so that we can reseal this to hold in the moisture. And this has almost done its job. It's a little bit crackly. So, you know, it's been, I don't know how many hours, most of the day. And then we're just gonna carefully pour that hot water in, let it soak, sealed, so it steams at the same time. And that is hot, hot water. And I'm excited to see how this turns out. Now, this smells incredible. Oh, this dish is amazing. It was really easy to make. You know, the longest part of it was browning the beef on all sides, but that was totally worth it because it added so much flavor. This is also a good test to see if we have any holes in the bags from the sharp noodles, and it does not look like we do. And it feels like it's softening up nicely in there. Wow. Wow, that's pretty quick, a lot faster than the last noodle dish. But this is delicious. So if you're just curious because you don't have a freeze dryer yet and you're just watching freeze drying videos, this recipe is really, really good. It is absolutely delicious, really easy to make. And that's why I made it for dinner a handful of nights ago and then, turn around and made it again to get on the shelf freeze dried because it is insanely good. And I have to tell you, this bag feels so incredibly soft already. It still feels like there's a lot of liquid in there, so I'm gonna let it sit for a minute. But this is way faster than the bowls, way faster. It's just holding all of that heat in and just forcing it upon the noodles and the beef. So that's amazing. All right, we'll give it a few minutes, maybe 5, and then we'll give it a test and a taste. All right, it's been about 6 minutes, so let's take a look. It smells really good. There is not a lot of liquid left on the bottom of the bowl, but there is some. So it might not be 100% fully hydrated. Let's put it in a bowl and let's take a look. So I'm just gonna dump it straight in. Got everything out of there. And see, that worked out to be a really nice serving size. These are a little bit smaller bowls, but it's plenty of food for one serving unless you're famished. All right, there is still some liquid, but let's see if we're soft. No, the noodles, the noodles that are like kind of stuck together, they feel just a little dense in the middle. So, but this beef, I mean, this beef is definitely tender and rehydrated, and a lot of the noodles are too. It's just some of the noodles that were denser because they were stuck together. But we'll get that to hydrate back up here in just another minute or two, and then we'll give that a taste. Just gonna cover it like that. It's been 2 more minutes, so about a total of probably 7 or 8 minutes in all. But we don't have any more standing liquid. So I think my calculations were really good. Let's give this a try. Smells really good. Again, this is another filling, comfort type dish. I gotta move away from noodles because I've done a couple of DIY MRE freeze-dried meals so far. But here we have a bite with everything on it. That is incredibly tender, fully rehydrated, flavorful. I'm not getting quite as much of the of the marjoram flavor as when it was cooked and eaten right away. But it is still very, very good, which is a good thing because I have 24 minus 1. I have 23 MREs ready to go. And that was so incredibly inexpensive. The beef is something I get once a year from a local farmer, and I end up paying about $5 a pound. So I used 4 pounds, so that was $20 worth of beef. I used 3 packages of egg noodles, and they were $1.99 each, so that's about $6. Cream of mushroom soup, gosh, I have no idea. Let's call that $2 each. That's 6. So we're at $32. $32, and we got 24 MREs. It's like $1.40 something a meal. That's incredible. You can't beat that. And yeah, we did probably pay maybe $2 to $3 for electricity to run that freeze dryer batch. We used a few pennies in bags and oxygen absorbers, but so we're still under $2 a serving, which is insanely economical and delicious. Please let me know if you give that recipe a try, what you think. And also let me know if you find that calculation formula helpful. I know that I peruse some like Facebook freeze drying groups and every now and then, and there always tends to be questions about, how did you do it and what's the rehydration ratio? And I've not seen a lot of responses to that. So hopefully this is something that you'll find value in and be able to use. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Freeze Dry Friday, creamy noodle beef dish. My name is Kelly, you're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.